Roger Kemp has had a long career in local government, serving as a municipal CEO in major cities across the United States. During this time, he taught graduate seminars on both coasts, including stints at the University of Connecticut and the University of New Haven. And if that wasn't enough, Kemp decided to share his extensive knowledge of public administration by writing or contributing to nearly 50 books relating to cities. We'd like to welcome Roger Kemp to the Municipal Voice to talk about national best practices and many other things he's learned along the way. We'd like to thank our premier sponsor at Digital Back Office, Palo Alto Networks. Check them out at digitalbackoffice.com or paloaltonetworks.com, as well as their sponsors at Gateway and Housatonic Community Colleges. The Municipal Voice is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state-local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or member municipal leaders. Dr. Kemp, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So your name is familiar to a lot of us that think about municipal governing on a regular basis. But for those of the public who may not know about your background, can you talk a little bit about why you got into public administration?
Well, after high school, I joined the service, blue-collar family. And in the military, I thought it was nice to serve the public. I was in the Coast Guard 4 years. When I got out, I went to night school on the GI Bill, 14 years at night, because I always had a full-time job. And in the course of taking classes, I got an AA degree, a BS degree, my MPA degree, my MBA, plus a PhD.
Okay, so you just kept going.
I was working on my bachelor's degree, and I thought it might be nice to serve the public. So I got my MPA degree. And I had time left on my GI Bill. There were 2 nighttime doctoral programs in California to get like a PhD in public administration. And one was USC. I grew up in LA and I didn't want to go to LA. And the other was Golden Gate University, San Francisco. I applied there. I was accepted there. I got a job in the city of Oakland in the Office of Budget and Management Services.
So that was your first kind of entry into municipal governing was in Oakland?
Yes, and it was a huge city. And I worked my way up to the manager's office. And the same month that I got my PhD in public administration, I was appointed as a city manager in Seaside, California, down on the Monterey Peninsula. So I was in Oakland 5 years, worked my way up to the manager's office. It's a very diverse community, and they got all kinds of problems you can think of.
Yeah, you didn't start off with a small, easy. You went right into Oakland. So,
and I kept, because I was a city manager and I would do financial things, I'd be flying back to Wall Street a couple times a year doing bond issues and stuff. And I kind of fell in love with the East Coast and Boston, New York. I'd even fly back to see the Thanksgiving Day parade that Macy's puts on. And I got the job in Clifton, New Jersey, from Southern California in Placentia, Orange County. And I was there for 5 years, and there was an opening in New Jersey. I applied for it. Normally when I apply for a job, I'm one of the top 3, one of the 3 finalists. And I got that job when I moved to, as they say there, Jersey.
New Jersey.
And I was there 8 years, and I didn't like the new mayor. My son was at Columbia, and drew a line around Manhattan, and I applied for Meriden, and I got that job, and I was in Meriden.
So that's what brought you finally to Connecticut.
13 years as a city manager. And then a headhunter called me up after 13 years, and I applied for a job out north of San Francisco, and I got it, and it helped my pension a lot. Because, like California, no matter where you work in a city, there's one pension. All the cities are on the same pension. In Connecticut, each city has their own pension system. And so the three cities I was in had their own little pension system in New Jersey, Connecticut, and they had one in California. So I had like 18 years in California and 6 years here and 8 years here. So I went back to California on the statewide pension system. I bought back my time in the cities that I worked in. I gave the money to California, and I retired with 28 years of service. And Meriden was 2% at 65, and because California is more liberal, the pension was 2.7% at 55. And I moved back to Connecticut because I liked it.
So first-hand experience with the Connecticut public pension system, though, that's a topic we could talk about for a long time.
That was very bad. And I've known city managers in Connecticut. I was here 5 years, here 4 years, here 3 years. You know, they'll be getting 5 or 6 checks when they retire, and that's not good.
So from your experience, at least the California system with kind of more unified thing for the pensions seemed to work better.
Yeah. And even in the charter in the city of Oakland, I got 4 years of pension time for my Coast Guard time in the military.
Oh, interesting.
And that, I never heard of that, but it was in the charter, and the voters approved it. That was great too.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I think one interesting thing about your career is that you now teach a lot of this stuff, and so you've kind of broached that gap between the practical working for the cities and teaching.
Oh.
What do you see as kind of the difference between teaching this stuff and in practical use? Like, is there stuff that seems to work in theory, but then when you get down to it, doesn't really work in the real world?
Well, I was always an adjunct professor every place that I served as a city manager.
Okay.
And the reason I got my PhD is to be an adjunct professor.
So you were teaching all along as you're doing this?
Out in California, several places, to Rutgers University in Jersey, to Yukon, Central, Southern, and UNH. And it was nice because I'm a real practitioner. I do real life's work, and I learned a lot from that. And I normally specialize in finance and budgeting, and I teach those classes. And I know a lot about preparing a budget, the politics of it, what works, and like what doesn't work. And just like a mayor once told me, Roger, just cut the budget. We trust your judgment. Don't even tell us what you cut. But 75% of a budget salaries and fringe benefits. Yeah. So to make any big cuts, I got to lay people off. Yeah. Who do you want me to lay off? Policemen, firemen? Yeah. You have to approve who I lay off. I just can't do that. So it's important that the public, the elected officials understand how this all works. It's the law. Yeah. And most states require a legally advertised public hearing on your budget before the council can adopt it. And it works. And the more people come to budget meetings, some cities have elected budget commissions in Connecticut or finance committees. Yeah. And you don't see those in California. But it's a nice thing to get citizens involved in the budget process. It's their money. And just like I tell students, 99% of budgets in local governments are line item budgets. That shows what goes into the budget, the money, the taxes. Yeah. Why don't we show the programs, what citizens are getting for their money? So every place I've worked, each department writes the programs that are provided to the public in the way of services. So the citizens say, here's what we're paying, here's what we're getting. So it's really they can see the value in where the output side. And that's logical, and you learn that working in the trenches. Yeah. So there's a lot of practical things, very political. Like I always work with the unions to balance the budget. And, no one ever does that. Yeah. We avoided layoffs by working with the unions, having to work furlough plans, hiring freezes, all kinds of things. And the goal was, I don't want to lay off your union's employees. Yeah. And we worked together. We always balanced the budget. So it sounds like what you're talking about is not just understanding the numbers and why you need to make these cuts, but also, because it is within government, how to sell this to the players at the table, to the union, to the workers, even to the public. If you explain where this money is getting spent, you're going to have a better shot at getting that budget through if people understand why. Yeah. No, it's just like a lot of members of the public don't like the unions. They're getting higher wages and more benefits and stuff like that. But I would work with the unions, and before doing that, I would have the council adopt a resolution to form a union management cost reduction committee. I want to work with all the union presidents. Council approves the resolution. The next day it's on the front page of the local paper. The council gets the credit for forming this cost reduction committee. All the citizens see the union is working with management to help balance the budget. They're just not wanting more. They're helping me reduce costs and balance the budget. It's very positive. Frame it as cooperation, not as some sort of adversarial thing with them, and you'll get further. Yeah. Always cooperate with them. The unions loved it, and their employees did, and they worked with me to help balance the budget to avoid laying off their employees, and it worked. Yeah, no one wants to lay anybody off. We've been talking about money a little bit in budgets, and since you've kind of covered nearly every topic at some point in your career, one thing that's always important to us here at CCM in Connecticut is property taxes. Anyone who's lived here knows that it can kind of a big burden. It's a very regressive tax. In your experience, how did Connecticut end up in this place with the third highest
property tax burden in the country.
Okay, it's a very good point. I've done a lot of research on it. For example, when I was out in California, property taxes were 67% of the local government revenue pie.
Okay.
In Connecticut, I think it's 98.5%.
It's very high. Yeah.
The highest in the nation. And the reason is, out in California, the state government gives a portion of the sales tax back to cities.
Mm-hmm.
And out in California, the state government gave percent of the hotel motel room tax back to the cities based on where it was generated from. You know, the cities with the hotels and motels got the money back.
Yeah.
In Connecticut, our state keeps 100% of the sales tax. Nothing goes back to cities. In Connecticut, our state keeps the hotel motel room tax, and nothing goes to cities to help them. So they have a very high reliance on the property tax.
Yeah, they don't have other options.
Now, I even would ask state senators, why don't you increase the sales tax a little bit, rebate that to cities to help them decrease their reliance on the property tax and get more money without having to increase property taxes. And there's one senator who was a lawyer who was laughing at me and says, wait a minute, I'm in a higher level government. You want me to raise taxes? You get the money and I take the political heat? That's not how the system works, Roger. If I raise taxes, we get the money.
And do you think that is sort of one of the roadblocks, is the people who would be passing the legislation would be essentially the state, and they'd be like, hey, we want to give away more money, and that's a hard sell.
The state has not helped cities in Connecticut. They keep all the money. And out in California, for example, like I said, the cities get all the hotel motel room tax back. They get a portion of the sales tax back. And property taxes were 67% of the revenue pie in every city on the average in California. And here it's over 98%. That's why we have, property taxes are very high. I pay it's almost $9,000 a year in Meriden for property taxes. When I was in California, it was about $3,000. When I was in New Jersey, it was $5,000, and now I'm paying almost $9,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll do it because I have to.
Yeah.
I have no choice. But if there was a way to help the state give cities revenue options so they can have other sources, so they don't have a huge reliance on the property tax, that would be helpful for the citizens. I've had senior citizens come to me virtually crying, Roger, our taxes keep going up. We don't get any more money. We're on a fixed income. People say, if you want money, sell your house. We're going to die in our house, and our kids are going to inherit our house. Yeah. But I'm not sure how we're going to pay our taxes in the future. Yeah. There ought to be some discounts for seniors or low-income people, or people that can't afford it.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH LP 103.5 FM. We're looking at ways to potentially, decrease the property tax in the state without, leading on taxes. Do you think diversification is one of those key components?
Giving cities options, yes.
And you say options because, one size might not fit all, and the situation might be different town to town, sort of thing. Like, you talk about hotel taxes. Would the shoreline perhaps be more into that with more tourism, but other states would need other options?
I know the state has a rental car tax now because mostly tourists come in, fly into airports, rent a car. So you're not making the voters mad, you're making tourists. The hotel motel taxes go up. It's normally not the locals. It's the tourists coming in. So when I was speaking with someone from the governor's office, and I said, what taxes do you like to increase that doesn't make people mad? He said, the sin taxes, Roger. The state has sin taxes. Cities don't. Cigarettes, alcohol, beer, wine, and liquor, and the gas tax. And they raise it anything they want, and the state gets all the money from it. And whatever it is, if it's liquor, people are going to buy it. I don't know what the tax on gas is. I should. I'm the city manager, but I don't know what the tax on gas is. People smoke cigarettes, don't know what the tax is on cigarettes.
When you show up at the gas station, you're still going to put that in the tank and buy the gas because you need to drive your car.
Yeah. So there should be more revenue options to cities to decrease our reliancy on things that hurt people and take too much of their money.
Yeah, and it hurts them, and also it just has that perception too, where if it's the mill rate for the property tax, it's this hard number, and it goes in the news, and it's up one more thing. But like you said, these sin taxes, people pay them all the time. They pay them as they use them. They don't think about it as much, and so it's a much less harder political.
They don't even know what they are. They just pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the property tax. Most people get a bill and write a check.
Yeah.
And I'm sure someone lives in Greenwich in $1 million. Well, they have a low mill rate because the value of the houses are so high.
Yeah.
But they're still paying a lot of money.
So the flip side of the taxes is, of course, budgets and how cities spend this money. They spend it to fund things like public education, infrastructure, repairs to things. You describe using a systems approach to understanding the local budgeting process. Can you tell us a little bit about this approach as a way to understand budgeting and why it makes more sense to think of public organizations in this way as a systems approach?
Well, every organization has input, which is the money. You use it to hire people, and you have a city hall and other facilities that people go to work in. And, cops have cars, firemen have trucks, and public works people have plows and all kinds of equipment. And that's the input side. And the output side is the services provided. Governments don't make anything, so there are no goods. There's only services to people. So you should know the input side, the output side. In the perfect budget, you'd have productivity measurements on programs that people provide the service. You can measure their productivity, but 99% of budgets in government are line item, and they only show the input side. And yet, in every city I've worked in, I show the output side so people can see here's what I'm paying, here's what I'm getting. Now, no one uses everything, but everyone uses something.
Yeah.
For example, I've never dialed 911, and I've lived there 20 years. I've never dialed 911.
Yeah.
But I still, when I walk downtown, that's where they have some of the problems. Most low-income people live. I walk downtown, I see policemen. I feel happy walking. I feel safe walking downtown, even though I live up on the hill in a big house.
Yeah, because you pay for those services,
I'm paying for them.
Yeah,
and that doesn't bother me. But it probably bothers other people who don't walk downtown and don't go downtown
and just want to stay in their house and not worry about anyone else.
So there are people paying for services that they don't use.
Yeah. This last year was something that no one has had to deal with before, but the budget process went kind of haywire. Towns and cities had to ensure the work was still getting done, budgets were getting passed, but they had to have COVID safety. They had all these new budget measures. Do you think that COVID has made it so that people have to budget differently now? That they have to think about things they didn't have to think about before, expenditures for safety things, being prepared for the next, whatever it is?
Okay, one of the things I think is kind of weird is that there's more and more public employees, like teachers, working at home. And you don't know, like if you go to City Hall, there's a time clock. They clock in, they clock out. You see them go, you see them come, you see them go. But when they work from home, how many hours a day are they working? You don't know what they're doing, but they're still getting a full paycheck. So it's nice to have people go to work to do what they do. So people, the citizens come talk to them. There's a time clock. You clock in, you clock out. People are getting paid for what they do, and it's documented. When people get paid at home for what they do, you don't know how many hours a day they're working. You don't know what they're doing.
So you see that as one of the things that needs to be dealt with if people are going to be working from home, is how do you keep track of that work and that time?
Well, I think people need a place to work. And it's nice because you serve the public. You should be there for the public. And city halls should not be closed and people at home. So things are changing and getting back to normal, thank God. And I think that's good.
Yeah.
And there was one, I was on the news the other night, one school district in Connecticut called Teachers Back to Work. I'm not going to mention a name, but like over 30 teachers called in sick. Day number one of work, because maybe they're used to working at home. They didn't want to go back to work because it's a lot more difficult when you have to go in and people see you for when you go in to when you leave. And it's easier working at home.
Or some would argue safer at certain points in this last year too. But certainly it is that being face-to-face is important in serving the public.
There was a Zoom session where it was on the news. There was a professor talking to students at home in a Zoom lesson, shirt and tie. And he forgets, he stands up He's wearing underwear. He doesn't have pants on. You can do things at home that you can't do at work.
Yeah.
And
like we also, I think the cat lawyer that showed up for a court hearing on Zoom, there was a fake cat image that the lawyer showed up and he looked like a cat. It was.
Oh, is that right?
His daughter or someone had turned something on, some filter, and he couldn't figure out how to turn it off. It was one of those ones that went around. You wrote a scholarly article back in 2009 suggesting that no new public services hiring freezes should use one-time revenues. You talk about one-time revenues, and this time we're thinking about the American Rescue Plan and how you shouldn't budget based on those one-time revenues.
Okay, if you have a one-time revenue, it won't be here next year.
Yeah.
So you should use it on like a capital project or something, a one-time expense.
Yeah.
You don't want to hire someone because you have money, and the next year the money's not there. You lay them off. You raise the taxes. You know, most governments would just raise the taxes to get more money, keep the person employed.
Yeah.
So if you, I remember what I won't mention the name of the city, but they had a multi-million-dollar budget deficit projected for the next year. And when I checked out their budget, they had a 20% reserve. And I told the mayor, most cities in America have an 8 to 12% reserve. And you even get a AAA bond rating with a 10% reserve. Why do you have a 20%? And he says, it's none of your business. It's what we want.
Okay.
And I went on the National City Manager website, the National Finance Director website, and I downloaded. Everyone recommends professionals all over the U.S., you know, financial people, like a 10 to 12% reserve. That would be healthy. And I gave that all to the mayor, and 24 hours later, he changed his mind and told me to use the multi-million dollars they had in reserve funds they didn't need to balance the budget.
But that wasn't a one-time thing because that was already there, right?
That was there.
So that wasn't budgeting on a one-time thing. That was money that was already there, and you just figured out how to utilize it better.
Yeah.
With the American Rescue Plan, you know, there's going to be a big influx, billions of dollars coming into the state. I know we spoke to Senator Murphy about it, and he encouraged municipalities to think big with how they kind of use this money. What sort of projects do you see as being the right fit for this kind of one-time infusion of money to the state?
Well, it would be nice to use to restore the infrastructure. The infrastructure in most cities is falling apart. Nationally, the public infrastructure, the roads, the streets, the sidewalks, bridges, has a grade of a D-.
Okay.
And things are falling
that's the entire
apart.
country?
On the average for the entire country. Things are falling apart, but most of the funds used to build the infrastructure were federal and state funds. Cities generally don't have the money to do it. Plus, in a whole bunch of states, there's state roads, county roads, and they go through cities. And cities have never had the funds or legally had to require to maintain those. So if you could use some of the money to enhance the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Some schools are getting old, bridges are getting old, and if you could put money back in the infrastructure, that would upgrade our cities and the ability of people to travel around, and that would be nice.
Yeah. So that influx used to fix up those things that you will then have that school, that road fixed up for years to come. Yeah. So that using that influx now will continue to pay dividends in the future.
Yeah.
We'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Roger Kemp. I'd like to thank our premier sponsors, Digital Back Office, Palo Alto Networks, who you can check out at digitalbackoffice.com and paloaltonetworks.com, as well as our sponsors, Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. Learn more at gatewayct.edu and housatonic.edu. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer, Christopher Gilson is our producer, Harry Draws on the board, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for our CCM chat series on our YouTube page.